Despite the fact that I have many thousands of hours in Minecraft and Gregtech specifically, we start off today's episode with a bit of a problem actually, and quite a big problem. We are going to get into all of that and more in today's episode, but first of all, we are actually solving some of the problems here and there. In the last episode, we played around with some Thaumcraft and unleashed the power of a dragon. We invested in the Grandmaster Energy Absorber to passively generate us EV power. And this thing proudly sits below the Applied Energistics terminals to power AE for free. And of course, we also spent a lot of time and mined out lots and lots of blocks here in the valley, trying to get it a little more developed. Trying to make it feel a little more finished than what it was. Hello, creeper. Of course, there are still a lot of mobs around here. He missed. He missed. He missed again. Ah! Is that purple fire? Hey, skeleton! Yeah, we dealt with a lot of mobs around here, and I suspect that's going to be the case for quite some time until we actually fix it. Yeah, and speaking of things which need fixed, we have a very long list of things which we need to address. There's too many projects to do and not enough time. However, right now our current situation is that we're in tier 4. We have visited Mars and Deimos, so we have access to things like titanium, tungsten and tungsten steel, and radon, which is now over 200 buckets. Not too bad at all. Is this thing still working? Yes, it is. Okay. So yeah, all of those materials will help us to get some more machines, but as you guys know with Gregtech, all the machines require circuits. So what I would like to do here is take some steps to make the production of circuits much cheaper. And we can do that with the next tier of circuit board and the epoxy circuits. We need to make something called this thing, molten epoxide. And to make the epoxide, we're going to have to make epichlorohydrin and bisphenol A, which is a mix of acetone, hydrochloric acid, and phenol. And epichlorohydrin, we can either go via biodiesel and make glycerol, or we can go via oil distillation and go via propene, chlorine, water, and sodium hydroxide. Yeah, I know. This is where the chemistry begins. And just taking a look at our circuit count here, it's not looking too healthy. This is probably the worst state that it's been in for many episodes. But it's not just the issue of the circuits. First of all, we have to actually craft some more today using the old recipe, since we're going to need machines to fix this problem. The other big problem is, well, we've got a lot more building to do, because all of these machines are going to take space, and I don't just want to cram everything in a corner. So I think along with the circuit crafting, I think I'm also going to develop some new spaces in our base here, and try to roughly plan out where the chemistry lines and the ore processing, everything like that is going to be placed. There is so many things to figure out, the placement of everything, and we don't want to build on top of space we need. Oh yeah, and not to mention the issue of power, which is something I'm not even going to think about right now. And if you guys are also confused right now, don't worry, just trust me, It's going to take us some time to get this figured out, but yeah, we'll address the issues one at a time here. Alright, so we start off today in the deep end, crafting circuits. I spent a long while ensuring we had enough circuits to fix the circuit problem. Topping up things like the SMD and the fine wire. And then using all those components to craft over 5 stacks of MV circuits, most of which was then converted into HV circuits. And during all this crafting, I noticed a lack of the basics, things like copper and redstone. So I grabbed the prospector scanner and headed out in search of a suitable location to drop the miners. Somehow though, 3, I don't think you're going to find it in Poison. Definitely not my finest moment, but we did eventually stumble across this, which features a tin vein, 3 iron veins, a copper, a gold, and a coal vein. And using the extended range of the ore drill, we should be able to gather a little bit of everything here. So that's exactly what I did. I configured the ore drill, including the on-site mixer to mix drilling fluid. We give it enough benzene to run its course, although I did actually forget about some compressed chests for the outputs. Pretty important right there, although fortunately we did actually have the material to craft some more, so I went back and fixed that issue. And once the multi-block was configured, I thought it might not be a bad idea to set up the single block miners as well. So we got the first HV miner on a redstone vein, and the other MV on a nearby manganese vein, specifically for tantalum. which is a material used in all the circuit crafting. And also on the way back to base we came across a huge vein of basalt, which is always something we need for building. Alright, so with the circuit problem resolved, we are probably going to need a few EV circuits, but we'll craft those as we need them. It's quite a tricky balance at this point in the game to make sure you don't make too many of the inefficient circuits, since of course we want to move on to the epoxy versions as soon as we can. So yeah, it's actually the next day for me here. I've been in the creative copy of the world designing the next expansion to the base, and I have a sneaking suspicion that is going to take me all day to do here in survival. It's a very large build and I'm trying to plan quite far ahead. But first of all, I actually want to do some progression, and we're going to unlock tier 5. We're going to have to craft the machine hull by first crafting the machine casing made of tungsten steel. But to convert the casing into the hull, we are going to need some PTFE, which we have over here. And we also need tungsten cable. So tungsten we should have in the blast furnace here. However, to actually coat this wire, you can't just use regular rubber like what we have been doing for every other cable up until this point. We need to use either a tungsten foil, which is very expensive actually, or we can use something called polyphenylene sulfide, right? Yeah, polyphenylene sulfide, which starts with chlorine plus benzene, and this is going to give us dichlorobenzene. Yeah, there's a full quest line for it here in EV, and this is something we'll fully automate at some point, but it's not very high on the priority list. I believe it is only a 2-stage process, though it looks like we need to grab some sodium, which we have over here, and also some sulfur, which we should have quite a bit of. Yeah, over 2,000. We can also put these through the chemical... Oh, I had some extra plastic circuit boards here. We can also put these through the chemical reactor. Another quest. Yes, it is. Oh, nice. And it also gives us hydrochloric acid here. Yeah, that is quite nice. We were kind of running a little low on that to make more tungsten. And yeah, there is so much fluid movement we're still doing manually, which is not exactly ideal at this point. But yeah, I believe all we have to do now is sodium sulfide plus dichlorobenzene. I don't know if it needs a circuit number or not. It doesn't, but we do need oxygen, which we have quite a lot of here from benzene. Now this thing should turn on, right? Yes, perfect. And we're trickling in a small amount of polyphenylene sulfide. Let's make sure we actually get the quest for this as well. And then inside the assembling machine, we can coat this tungsten wire. Circuit 24, some silicon rubber. I think the quest also wants us to make the platinum wire, which also has to be done this way. And we should have some extra platinum left. Yeah, 17 left. We might as well do this for the quest, since we'll need some platinum wire later on. Or more accurately, platinum cable. This should be the quest. There it is. And also with that, we can convert the IV machine casing into the IV machine hull. And we've now unlocked insane voltage. Yeah, I think we can say that very, very loosely. I mean, we don't have the ability to actually do anything in IV yet. What's he doing? What are these zombies doing? The first quest in IV will give us an IV loot bag. And also, if you're not already aware, the enchanted IV loot bags are the best in the game. At least relatively speaking. So we should have the fortune books. Since, well, you know, we have this printing press over here. The thing we don't have, though, is the IV electric motors. And this takes graphene wire. Made from graphene dust, made from advanced glue and phosphorus doped wafers, plus graphite. And these recipes didn't exist in Season 1 back when we first played this pack. So it kind of caught me off guard a little bit, especially the advanced glue. That sent me down a massive rabbit hole. So I just decided to craft some so that we could get the enchanted IV bags. And we'll go in depth on these processes when it becomes relevant. Alright, so we should have enough for 4 IV enchanted bags. I'm currently making some more fortune books, and apparently you can put a hopper underneath this thing. Let's see if that is the case. Oh yeah, look at that. That makes things significantly easier. Nice. Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to do inputs for this as well. Maybe a hopper from the top could probably work. Anyways, we got our tungsten steel rods here. And using the advanced glue, we were able to get some graphene, which is currently being made into wire. I think it has to be 4x wire. And oh man, is this stuff expensive. I don't know how we're going to manage when we get to IV. But yeah, here we go, the first 4 IV electric motors. Then we have currently 3 IV bags. I want to get a 4th, but we're waiting on this thing resetting. In fact, I think we actually have to log out. It's a bug in this version of the game. Okay, logging back in here should reset the quest for us. and we can convert 3 EV bags into 1 IV bag. And I've been saving the EV bags specifically for this purpose. I've already traded a few in. So now the IV bag plus the IV motors plus a Fortune 3 book gives us the tier 5 enchanted bag. Let's get 4 of these. And I'm really betting on these things. Come on, fingers crossed. We need... What do we need? We need ender tanks is what we need. And it would be quite nice to replace those motors we just used. I think those are also in the loot table. Don't let me down, Greg. Oh my god, I can already see success right here. Oh my goodness, nice. Nice, look at this. Okay, we got 4 electric pumps, 8 pistons, 4 motors, which replaces the cost of the bags, plus conveyor mod. Oh my goodness, this is so expensive. And we got the ender tanks. If you guys don't know the recipe for this, basically it's a Thaumcraft recipe, which we've not actually unlocked yet. Yeah, maybe we can unlock this thing. It's in the New Horizons tab. And of course, it's a large research. Don't judge me, by the way. I seen there was a lot of comments judging my research skills in the previous episodes. I'm not an expert at Thaumcraft research. Okay, this should get the job done though, right? Yeah. This unlocks the ender tank recipe. And look at this. It costs us a blaze rod. Okay, that's not too bad. 100 of each V. So you need to progress far enough with the wand progression. This is enderium plates. And then of course you have the IV emitter and sensor for 1. And 1 ender tank is really no good, right? So ideally you craft these 2 at a time. And this is so expensive. That's IV circuits. And this is iridium rods as well. And if you guys are not familiar with the process for iridium, then it's basically all of this. So it's safe to say we would not be getting ender tanks anytime soon, other than through the IV enchanted bags, which hopefully now you can see why I wanted to rush these things, and hopefully we should be able to get a few more in the future. But the ender tank here is going to help us out today. Potentially, if we get far enough. So yeah, talking of getting far enough, that zombie isn't getting very far. Neither's that one. Oh my goodness, these mobs. Anyways, yeah, at this point we're going to need some space to progress any further, and also take a crack at getting epoxy. Wish me luck, this is going to take a while, I think. Well, we are making some progress here, but this is extremely slow going. I think potentially I've been at this for over 20 hours by now, at least between the creative world and this one. But yeah, where we're at currently is still in the digging phase mostly. Trying to clear out some space. We're digging a massive hole here. And I figured in the next couple of episodes we're going to need a lot of machines and a lot of space. So I kind of just went all out here to save us doing it a couple of episodes down the line again. It looks like I might have placed the filler a little bit too close to the existing wall, so I'll have to fill that back in. But yeah, the toughest part was trying to get all of this symmetrical. The whole base isn't going to be symmetrical, but I want the walls behind the valley to be. So this side is mostly done. It's probably going to be impossible to visualize what it looks like. And unfortunately, I'm not sure which day we started this project on, but let's see where we finish this thing. Currently, we're on year 10, day 232. So apparently we've mined over 174,000 blocks of stained clay and 163,000 blocks of stone, and that probably doesn't even count the filler either. It's also now approximately 30 days later, and I have been doing a ton of work here on the expansion to the base, and honestly I'm really pleased with how this is turning out. So you'll have to use your imagination to get rid of some of these torches, but they are very necessary at this point. We have a lot of open space. And I realised in the previous clip that the walls were not symmetrical, even though I said I wanted them to be. I believe I've now fixed that. Everything should now be symmetrical. And even if not, it's probably going to be well, you guys will probably pick up on anything that's missing, right? I know some of you guys really like to pay attention to things like that. But yeah, speaking of missing blocks, there are quite a few. And it looks like we missed a few torches down there. Oh, and up there. Yeah, you see what I mean? There's so many mobs in this place. Got 'em. Anyways, yeah, we basically have 4 identical rooms, almost identical. This one is the least developed. But think of these like the default configuration of the rooms, and we'll make them more specialized and tailored to what they need to hold within. So this one we're going to be filling out today. This one is going to be for fluid storage. And all of these rooms I reckon are going to be different colors. It makes sense for fluid storage to be blue though, right? So the rest of them will be recolored. But yeah, I'm actually really liking this room design. Let me know what you guys think about this. I made sure to keep the ceilings tall enough for Distillation Towers, which will go in the next room here. So we have another connection through to the server room here. And because it's symmetrical on both sides, there's also a little window up here, which I've been using to fly through, just to save us going underneath the stairs, but I guess we can use both. There's some missing blocks down there. Through here we have 2 more identical rooms, almost. This one here is going to be for on-demand crafting. Things like our assemblers and mixers and bending machines, all of that stuff will go through here, connected to Applied Energistics. I also built these in such a way that we could expand very easily, so I left the back off them deliberately. And we should have plenty of room to expand this way. Even though this is the same side as the starter base, we are down at like Y45 down here, and I believe the starter base finishes at Y63, or maybe 61 down at bulk storage where the smelter is. So yeah, we should basically have infinite space to go this way. And that is the same for all 4 corners of the valley. And then the last corner, which we haven't seen, we're back in the middle here. The last corner, which we're going to be dealing with today, is this one here. Again, with plenty of room to expand, and we also have room above here. So this one is going to be for the chemistry, including this top area up here. The top areas I didn't build, that's a little bit too much to do all in one. Yeah, we have all the space up here as well, which has another catwalk, and this connects to the terminals here. And then, yeah, we have even more space to go this way. If we, I don't know, maybe we make some sort of path to the surface? Or maybe even go down? I'm not sure yet what we're going to do with this space. But yeah, in terms of the part we built last episode, this big rocket silo circle, I think we're also going to connect that into the bits we've built today. So I did plan on that. I didn't get around to building it though, but this path is going to lead around. This takes us through to the circle part out here. And then we also have another connection point on the lower levels. So this is the main chemistry room right here. We have another connection point out here to the catwalks in the silo. So everything is kind of interconnected. That's exactly what I wanted. That's one of the criteria for this place, is to have multiple access points to every location in the base. Oh yeah, and these things with the pillars, the sort of staggered look, that was actually a mistake. And I just decided to roll with it. It kind of looks like a big shutter door, which I'm really liking. All of this area down here, I really debated what to put down here. I've tried out a lot of different block combinations. I think ultimately we're going to go with grass. I want something that's sort of a little higher contrast. Maybe we make it like a garden down here. I'm not actually sure yet. But anyways, I think that's enough of explanations. If you guys have any feedback, by the way, I'm all for it, as always. I always like to hear your feedback on the building side of things. We're a little bit too close here. So we're back here since we need to set up the oil rig again. This thing, I believe we took to Mars with us, but it's been sitting idle for quite some time. And it turns out that we need an oil rig again. So along with the building, I've also been doing a lot of work trying to figure out what exactly we need for epoxy. And it's quite a complicated chemical process, at least if you're starting from nothing, which is effectively the situation we're in right now. I mean, we basically have no infrastructure, and trying to do all of this at once is a little overwhelming, I'm not gonna lie. Do we not have benzene here? I didn't bring any fuel with us. Or a super tank for this thing. Oh, actually, you know what? We don't need a super tank. We're gonna use the ender tank. Coloured with black, of course, for oil. Alright, so I went and gave the oil rig some fuel. We should now be seeing some raw oil in this ender tank, which we are. And this thing actually has a pretty sizable buffer. I forgot about this in GT&H. It can hold 256 buckets. I also didn't realise we had quite a big backlog still of raw oil, which is nice. I don't think we're going to use all of it today, but it's always nice to have some oil, since the first step to epoxy is oil distillation. I did actually make up some more EV circuits. I made up 16 so that we can get 4 distillation towers. Please tell me we can get 4 of these things. Nope. We're just missing the pumps here. But fortunately, Applied Energistics makes this quite easy. We're missing the motors now. Yeah, it's so nice being able to just shift click everything. Oh nice, that was a stack of motors. Okay, and now we should be able to get 3 more distillation towers. No? And we're almost starving to death here after holding the super tank. Okay, we're short some stainless steel fluid pipe. I believe we have a lot of stainless steel. In fact, the blast furnace might still be running. It looks like it's finished. Alright, there's the 4 distillation towers. Before we distill the oil, it has to go through an oil cracking unit. This thing. Oh no! Oh, no way, this takes coil blocks. And if you guys remember last episode, the situation with the coils is that we are out of mica. No matter how bad my math is, I know for a fact that 40 is not enough. Wait a second, we do have some coil blocks, don't we? Okay, we should be able to make this work and also craft the 3 oil crackers that we'll need. Perfect. Let's see, we're also going to need maintenance hatches for all this stuff. I did start to batch craft a lot of this before. We'll need input buses, if I can type. We're going to have to make some more input buses. Output buses, 13. I don't think is going to be enough. Muffler hatches for the oil crackers. We'll need energy hatches. We have 8 HVs and 4 MVs. I think that's going to be enough. And also some more clean stainless steel casings for the distillation towers and oil cracking units. I have a feeling we'll need a few stacks of these. Machine controller covers, fluid detector covers. Probably a few more than that actually. Ender fluid conduits. Let's also try to grab some more super tanks. I want to try to get as many as we can. How many can we make? 3? That's not exactly ideal. Okay. More hermetic casings. 21. Can we get 21 super tanks? Do we want 21 super tanks? I guess we have 22 now. Alright, that might have been a little bit too many to craft all at once, but sure. And while I haven't been as diligent as maybe I should be from purchasing Fluix cable from the quest book, we should have enough here to actually wire up these first 2 rooms in the base. So you might remember that I mentioned that we're going to be establishing the standard of AE connections on the left. Well, I've since changed my mind on that actually. And all the cables are going to go down the middle. Only this time I've actually lowered the catwalks by 1 block. And so from here the new standard will be AE connections on the top. And then all of the power cables which will eventually accompany the AE cables will go beneath these ones. And that way we can easily send them off to the left and the right without having to go, you know, one of these guys. A little thing underneath. And that just avoids cable tangling in the future. Okay, so obviously we are going to need an Applied Energistics connection in the new rooms that we've just built. These will be extended and up the wiring tunnels, which we've already established. Although I think it's on the lower levels that we're building, so it needs to go down. I guess we can make it hug this path here. And just keep it on the same level. Oh, this works out perfectly. Look at this. Oh, I love this. All the wiring is going to be nice and clean. We want to keep the wires nice and straight. And then once it gets to this pillar here, I think we can actually go straight through the middle, right? That's probably going to be the cleanest option. Yeah, I think we'll actually take it down a block inside the pillar so that we're underneath this floor section. Oh, this is perfect. And I also went ahead and wired an Applied Energistics connection to the opposite side for the fluid storage area. Okay, so there's a lot of things which we still have to figure out. I still have to figure out here. And those zombies are... That's not acceptable here. I'm not going to be able to hear myself think. Where are those guys? Through here? Here? Anyways, yeah, I realized I haven't actually explained what we're doing here. So, just bear with me here, and I might actually discover some flaws in my plans here, so normally it's a good idea to go through it. But I have 3 things pinned here. We're going to be lightly steam cracking light fuel, moderately steam cracking naphtha, and severely steam cracking heavy fuel. The GTNH official spreadsheet has actually put together a very handy list of everything that we can get from distillation, and it actually lays it out nicely for us rather than having to look through multiple pages of NEI. So on the left here you can see lightly steam cracked, moderately steam cracked, and then severely steam cracked. That's what LSC, MSC, and SSC means. And then you have the type of cracked fuel, in this case light fuel, heavy fuel, naphtha, refinery gas, butene, butadiene, etc. So we get raw oil, right, from the oil rig that we just set up. If we send that through a distillation tower, which is the first one we crafted, the first distillation tower is going to give us sulfuric naphtha, sulfuric gas, heavy fuel, and light fuel. The sulfuric gas we can ignore for now. For the moment, we'll just be storing that, and we'll process it down later on. What we're interested in is naphtha, I'm going to flip-flop between pronunciations here. Sulfuric naphtha, heavy fuel, and light fuel. And to convert between sulfuric and regular, you just have to send it through a chemical reactor with hydrogen. So we want the regular versions of this fuel. And then from here, it really depends on which route you take for power. Since we're not going for high octane gasoline, which you need octane for, you can see here, that only comes from hydrocracking. That's the difference between SC and HC. This is steam cracked, this is hydrocracked, and it gives you a different output here. So because we're not going for high octane gasoline, we don't need to do any hydrocracking. And the other one's heavy fuel and naphtha. Hydrocracking doesn't really give you a whole... I mean, it gives you a lot more propane, but we don't really need propane. Propane you can only use for basically fuel, so we can effectively ignore hydrocracking, and we want to exclusively pick steam cracking. And there is also a difference between severely steam cracked and moderately steam cracked. You basically just have to select which option is best for you. In our case, we're going to severely steam crack the heavy fuel since we get the most benzene. It also gives us the most propene, which is something we need for epoxy. This is our propene right here. And we also get the most ethylene out of severely steam cracking. So we are severely steam cracking heavy fuel. We also want to moderately steam crack naphtha. And the reason we're not going for the severely steam cracked naphtha is basically because of the propene again. We get 400 compared to 300 if we were to severely steam crack. And we get 125 benzene compared to just 100. We basically get more of everything except for methane. We get 150 less methane, but that's really not a big deal. The trade-off is definitely worth it. And then the final one, we want to lightly steam crack light fuel. This one we might change later on, since lightly steam cracking light fuel gives us the most heavy fuel, which again we can steam crack itself and then distill. So it's basically for this reason, because we get the most heavy fuel, we can also make naphtha out of lightly steam cracking light fuel. We do get slightly less propene and slightly less ethylene out of this way, but I think we more than make up for it with the extra heavy fuel and naphtha that we can use to distill. So yeah, I hope that made sense. I wanted to give you guys an insight into my thought process. We still have a little bit more crafting to do. I have to make up some more casings and input hatches, etc. And I'm also going to put together a basic machine layout here, and then we can get cracking. Literally. So after countless hours and many days of preparation for this moment, it's finally time we start some chemistry. So after crafting some more of the casings and components, I began to lay out the basic shape of our chemistry and oil distillation center. Wow, we are using so much stainless steel doing this. So I think our only option is to actually wall share these distillation towers. As much as it's going to harm the aesthetic, I think if we want this operational, we're going to have to tuck these a little bit closer together to save on the casings. You know, in all the time it's taken us to get to this point in the game and play with all this high technology, all the chemistry, applied energistics, ender fluid conduits, all that stuff, I think I've actually forgotten how to do this. We've actually run into quite a few issues which should not be the case. So yeah, let me show you what's going on here and some of the problems we have. And I'm not sure how we're supposed to address them, but... So starting from the raw oil, this goes into the input hatch of the first distillation tower. This is the beginning of the process. This used to be actually in the middle, but I moved some things around and rebuilt this a few times. So yeah, raw oil is actually going to be distilled on circuit 9. This is not something I mentioned before, but it gives us an extra fluid, naphthenic acid. The rest of the outputs though, the sulfuric heavy fuel, light fuel, gas and naphtha, is all sent into the input hatches of this LCR. And this is going to be mixed with hydrogen, which is going to be insert right here from AE2. That's something we'll talk about in a second. Need to refill the flight potion. I don't know how many times I've done this. But yeah, those are going to be output into super tanks. And for these ones, we actually don't want to invert. Normally, we invert this fluid detector cover on all the other machines. But here, since we have multiple, if we were to invert the cover, and we say redstone on, machine on, which is the normal rule we follow, I still want that to be the case. But if we invert it here, that means if one of these things fills up, the redstone signal is going to turn off, but at least one of these things is still going to be empty, so it's still going to stay powered and still keep the machine running. So we have to invert it before it hits the machine controller, but not invert the cover. So to do that, we can actually just use vanilla redstone, and we'll have to move this cover right here. Yeah, so this is one of the problems we're running into here. We have to use ugly redstone torches. I believe there is actually a NOT gate that we can maybe craft, right? This thing from Project Red. Yeah, see, that kind of just ruins the whole thing. But if it works, we might just keep it for now, because remember, the multi-blocks will void if their output ends up full, and it still has inputs to run the recipe, which is what we're trying to avoid here. I'm not actually sure if this will work though. Anyways, we'll come back to that problem. Once we have the regular versions of the sulfuric gases, those are going to be filtered into the oil crackers. The first one is going to be naphtha. Second one is going to be heavy fuel. Actually, I guess we should do heavy fuel on the bottom. That makes the most sense. Yeah, regular heavy fuel. Next one will be naphtha. And the last one will be regular light fuel. That's sulfuric. This is the one we're looking for. So yeah, we also have the output hatches to the oil crackers on this side. It goes from left to right. Those also have the fluid detector covers on there for at least one recipe worth. Over a recipe worth. I believe it gives us 1.2 buckets. So you want to make sure generally that you have enough to run the second recipe while the fluid is being extracted, so that it's not constantly stopping and starting the machine. So as you guys know, the other thing we need for this is steam, which we get from some advanced fluid heaters, turning water into steam on circuit 1. Those are MV powered by an MV gas turbine, but the oil crackers themselves are actually running at HV. So they're running from advanced or turbo gas turbines, which is the HV one, into HV energy hatches. And the 3 oil crackers actually share an input for steam. And I believe it should work like that. I think you can share some of the hatches. You just can't share anything like a maintenance hatch or an energy hatch. Sharing the fluid inputs though should be okay, since they all require steam. And then the other thing we're missing for this is the program circuits. So lightly cracked light fuel takes circuit 1, this goes in the controller. Moderately steam cracked naphtha takes circuit number 2, so we have to make a circuit 2. Severely steam cracked heavy fuel is circuit number 3. So let's give it a circuit number 3 in the bottom, and this should now be ready to go. The other thing I want to mention at this point is, even though we're using gas turbines, that's not the plan long term. Ideally we have actually energy distribution around the base, and we have centralized power, and then we run energy cables to this area. We're going to go the old-fashioned way and just use gas turbines on every machine. And since the distillation towers also give us benzene, I'm hoping it's going to be enough to self-sustain. I'm very doubtful though. This is going to give us like peanuts and compared to our regular benzene system. So I think we'll have to top it up somehow. So yeah, from here we have the basics, but we still have oxygen, which actually has to be supplied here. This is the last LCR I didn't talk about yet. This is for hydrogen sulfide, which needs oxygen. We need to give hydrogen over here. And then we need some way to store the outputs, i.e. everything from these distillation towers. And then also this, what is this called again? Naphthenic acid. We need a way to store this. So what we are going to do here is have a centralized fluid storage, as I mentioned earlier. This of course will be the blue room. We still actually have to color the oil room. I'm not sure which color that's going to be. If you guys have any suggestions, leave them in the comment section. So yeah, inside this room we will store almost every single fluid and chemical that we come across. And there's still one very fatal flaw with this, which I'm really not sure the best way to get around. So again, if you guys spot anything with this, I would really appreciate some feedback on how to fix this. But today is not all about problems. I know, it kind of seems like I'm just coming back to you guys with one problem after another. I actually did fix the redstone problems here. Since you may or may not be able to tell by this angle, I completely rebuilt this design again. Maybe once or twice more. The previous design I really was not happy with, and I felt like we were compromising both on the aesthetics and on the functionality. So I reordered some things. Mostly it works the same, but there are a few differences with... Is that a ninja skeleton? So yeah, most of this works exactly the same way. It's just when it comes to the fluid distribution that things are a little bit different, which we will talk about. What we're going to do is have a bunch of P2Ps on super tanks, and all of these super tanks are set to lock the fluid. So I've already started to order these things. The first one is oxygen, next one is hydrogen, then we have nitrogen. So the super tanks will only allow one type of fluid inside, in this case oxygen. We also allow input from output side, and we enable automatic output. And this is sending its fluids back into the fluid P2P. So P2P channels can also transport fluids, not just Applied Energistics channels. And we can do that by clicking with a bucket. This converts it into the fluid P2P. And fluid P2Ps are bi-directional, so they can insert and extract from the tank. So I believe I've already given an Applied Energistics channel. We have to make sure there's channels down here. So this P2P is for AE channels. This is connected to the main controller. All of the fluid P2Ps also have to be given an Applied Energistics channel. And then I've also crafted up this advanced memory card. And this thing is, I think, is exclusive to GTNH at the moment, but it's actually the best thing ever. Look at this. So clicking on the fluid P2P lets us access every single fluid P2P on the network. Right now there's only two, one for oxygen and one for hydrogen. The rest here are currently offline, they're not connected. And the best part about this device is we can actually name the P2Ps. So we're going to call this one oxygen, and the other one we're going to call hydrogen. So now, if we come over to the oil distillation room, or the chemistry room, whatever you want to call it, I've also went ahead and wired up all these machines with AE. So we also have an AE P2P here to give channels. We have 32 on this dense cable. Right now there's 0 in use because none of the P2Ps here are connected. Okay, let's do this in order, right? So the raw oil gets distilled here. That gets sent out into 5 different outputs, one of which is naphthenic acid. So this works exactly the same way we had it, only the naphthenic acid is buffered here. There's a filter for naphthenic acid, and then the rest of them get sent into the LCR like before, i.e. the sulfuric light fuel, the sulfuric heavy, naphtha, and refinery gas. So once the naphthenic acid leaves the distillation tower and gets put in this low voltage tank, this is just a temporary buffer, so that we're able to place a fluid P2P on here. Most of the fluid we want to be sent into main fluid storage, so we will actually need a pump for this. I think we'll go for an HV pump. I can hear a skeleton. Hi, skeleton. So yeah, we want to place a pump on the tank, which will send the fluids into the fluid P2P. And then let's just go in order here. So the next one is going to be naphthenic acid. Well, maybe we should have done the oxygen hydrogen first. I guess we'll come back to those. We'll do it in order of the oil distillation room. So naphthenic acid, we can take the next free super tank here, and we can call this naphthenic acid. Naphthenic acid, like that, I think. Also make sure this is connected here. Okay, so this device should now be online. Yeah, device online unlinked. It's called naphthenic acid. Now we can come back over to this fluid P2P. And since we have somewhere for it to go, all we have to do is find naphthenic acid and bind the output. So now these two are bound to B46. And just as a tester, if we put in some benzene here, since it's what I have, I don't think we have any naphthenic acid at the moment. If we put in some benzene here, it should be sent to the super tank. Yes, look at that. That is perfect. That's exactly what we want. And we should now see it in that super tank back at fluid storage. Now that shouldn't happen because the tank will eventually be locked. Once the first... Yeah. See, we didn't lock this tank here to naphthenic acid, so it allowed benzene to flow. But since we're doing one frequency per fluid type, it actually shouldn't matter if this is locked or not. We are still going to lock it though, just to make sure. So from now on, basically all B46 frequencies will contain naphthenic acid. And you can probably see where we're going with this, right? Now that we have naphthenic acid here, or we will have, anywhere we need naphthenic acid, all we have to do is place another fluid P2P and connect it to the naphthenic acid frequency. And you might be saying, what about the fluid storage disks? That is a very good point, but the fluid P2Ps, the benefit to doing fluid P2P is they have infinite fluid transfer rates. So effectively, if you can jam millions of buckets through this thing at once, it will happily transfer it for you. And that will be important for things like oxygen and hydrogen, which are used all over the place. So it's important that we're not bottlenecked by Applied Energistics. But also there's downsides to doing this. The downside is obviously we are limited by how much we can actually store. There is bigger sizes of tanks, like the quantum tanks, and these hold ridiculous amounts of fluids. Yeah, the quantum tank 5, so we should be fine here in the early game, even into late game. And there's actually something called the yacht tank, YOTT, or the yacht tank, this thing. And this is a multi-block storage or fluid storage tank. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but effectively I don't think there's any way to actually fill this thing. It's a bit like the tier 8 energy ball from Draconic Evolution. It's effectively infinite fluid storage. So the first idea was to chain these tanks together so we could have multiple tanks of oxygen. But this means there would potentially be no more oxygen for the fluid P2P to access, since it would all be sent into the back tank. The obvious solution is just to use another fluid P2P on the back tank, like this. Like that should work, right? But that also increases the channel usage. Might be our only option though. The other idea I had was actually to use the fluid cells and put the fluids inside of cells and then transfer the cells between the buffer tanks. And that probably could also work. I'm just not exactly sure in the details of that. It's not something I've put a lot of time into yet. Speaking of time though, I think we're actually out of time for this episode. So I did actually, as I mentioned, fix some of the redstone controls on the multi-blocks over here. And I've still got some frequencies to set. I'll make sure to get all the fluids configured between episodes. But for the most part, this is actually ready to go. All the filters are actually set already. And yeah, I managed to fix all the redstone. So we're actually combining both of the signals here using a NOR gate. So if both of these are off, it turns the output signal on. And this allows us to obey the rule of machine on, or redstone on, machine on. I did actually run the distillation towers just a little bit, just to make sure we could get this all set correctly. So we have a tiny amount of fluids here, one of them being propene, which is our goal for today. Actually, our goal was epoxy, right? But as you can probably imagine, we are still very far from epoxy. Propene is just one of the very many ingredients we need. And this is also a bit overkill just to get propene. We could have done this a much easier way, just using one oil cracker and so on. But you know, we didn't want to compromise this. We are going to need it eventually, we might as well maximize efficiency. And at least this way, we shouldn't have to rebuild this again. So yeah, obviously all of these outputs, methane, propene, ethylene, all of this will get space in main fluid storage. I think this episode has actually taken me the longest in the series to produce so far. I mean, I've just spent an absolutely insane amount of time in this game. As you could probably tell by the day counter. Not to mention, like, over 15 or 20 hours in creative. And to be perfectly honest, the episode didn't exactly turn out the way I wanted it to. Yeah, I ran into so many issues, not to mention the numerous rebuilds of this whole thing. Oh, and of course the resource costs. I mean, we are in GTNH, of course. Hopefully you guys understand though, right? Honestly, it was probably too much to try to take on in one episode. And we're still not done either. Yeah, I'm going to set all these frequencies right now. But yeah, with that, I want to thank you guys all for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end of this video. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode of New Horizons.